Hello, time for another Man in Gray book review. Today's book is Notes on the Cinematograph by Robert Bresson, translated from French by Jonathan Griffin, and originally published in 1975. This reprint edition is from 2016, and it's by the New York Review of Books, and it's 88 pages. Robert Bresson was a French film director, and among movie scholars, he's considered not just one of the great French directors, but one of the greatest directors of all time. A number of his films often make the list of 100 greatest movies of all time. Movies like A Man Escaped, Pickpocket, Balthazar, and The Trial of Joan of Arc. Bresson lived to be 98 years old. He had a very long career, but despite his long career, he only directed fewer than 20 films. He was very, very meticulous in planning out his movies. He wrote them. He conceived of the camera angles and lighting and everything. He was a extremely micromanaged manager type of director. He knew what he wanted to do, and he had a very distinct philosophy about filmmaking. Now, this book is not like your typical film director book. It's made up of a series of short journal entries that Bresson made over a long period of time in which he discusses various aspects of filmmaking. One of the things that Bresson detested was theatrical acting. He tended to avoid using movie stars or well-known stage actors. He often cast complete unknowns, non-professional actors in major roles. An example is his first major success as a director was a film called A Man Escaped, which was about a French resistance fighter who makes a daring escape from a German prison during World War II. He met a man named Francois Lettier, who was a soldier serving in Morocco. He met him in Morocco and was struck by his appearance and the way he acted and moved around. And he decided to cast Lettier in this movie, in the starring role of A Man Escaped, even though he had no experience. Lettier had no experience in acting at all, never even dreamed of being an actor, and yet he gives an incredible performance in A Man Escaped. He really looks like a desperate man, desperate to escape from prison and terrified of being recaptured. And a lot of his films are like that. He gets remarkably naturalistic performances from non-professional actors. Another prominent feature of Bresson's films is the lack of music. There are very few music cues in most of his movies. You'll hear some music in the opening titles and the closing titles, and then a few brief musical passages during very important scenes. But Bresson regarded music as too much music cues, as adding to the artificiality of film. And so he really tends to avoid it. One of the things you see in this book is he tends to refer to actors as models, and he really thought of actors the way fashion photographers think of models. It's basically objects to be moved around within a camera frame. And so he really has a unique attitude toward acting. He wanted them to be as natural as possible, and he was probably just as more interested in how they moved around in the camera as to what words they would say. A number of his films, very little dialogue. In the film A Man Escaped, there's probably less than 10 lines of dialogue in the first 15 minutes of the film. It's just very, very sparse, minimalistic even. This book, as you read through these short little journal entries, they're almost like Zen koans. They're very ambiguous, many of them. It's not clear what he's saying, but it's clear he's got definite ideas. And so I copied down a handful of these statements from this book. I want to read them to you, and you kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. In one of them, he says, "Forms that resemble ideas, treat them as actual ideas." Forms that resemble ideas, treat them as actual ideas. Now, what does that mean, especially in terms of filmmaking? What do you mean, treat them as actual ideas? He also says, things are more visible not by more light, but by the angle from which I regard them. So the angle of the camera is more important than the amount of light you use. An actor needs to get outside of himself in order to see himself in the other role. So, as an actor, you need to not be yourself, but to get outside of yourself so you can be someone else. So, there's all kinds of little statements like that as you go through the book, these kind of short, pithy statements about acting and directing and lighting and camera movement and so forth. And so you really get an idea that this is a guy who was very, very serious about his work. He regarded filmmaking as an art form. He wasn't interested in the commercial aspects of filmmaking. He really saw himself as an artist, much like the great French Impressionist painters of the 19th century. So, if you are interested in French filmmaking or international filmmaking at all, and of course, if you've watched Bresson's films and like them, you'll certainly want to read this book. If you're looking for a conventional film history book or book about film technique, you're not going to get it out of this. It's much more ambiguous and philosophical. It's very unique among film director books. The book is Notes on the Cinematograph, and the author is Robert Bresson. This has been another Man in Gray book review. Thanks for watching.